So welcome everyone. My name is Brianna Sadler. I am the MakerLab coordinator at Two Rivers Gallery, which is located on the traditional and unceded territory of the Lheidli-T'enneh. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. So I want to welcome you. It is our very first MakerLab Monthly Makes. We are sorry, I had to mute something. It was two ears in my thing. Sorry. So this is our first ever MakerLab Monthly Makes. I'm really excited to share this with you guys today. For the month of February, we encouraged everyone to actually create and make something based on the prompt connection. So I have made something, and all these lovely people who are joining me today have made something, and we are going to share with you all the pieces and things that we made and how it relates to the prompt of connection. I really hope this encourages you to come and join us for our next upcoming months. So next month, our prompt will be story. And it's really about creating a creative community and making something based on whatever medium that you want to make. So without further ado, I'm going to quickly introduce everyone and then we're going to get started. So as I said, my name is Brianna. To my right, I have Maureen Faulkner. Just below Maureen, there, just give a little wave when I say your name so they know it's you. There we go. Just below Maureen, I have Ken Turner. Right next door to Ken is Margaret Tatey. And next to her is Belinda Larish. Above Belinda is Ian Simpson. And the lovely lady in the orange cap is Cassandra Thurmer. Awesome. So, Belinda, do you want to get us started?
I will indeed. So what I have to show is it's the result of me wanting to connect wherever I went, but do it as cheaply as I could. So into a shoebox, I used to do a lot of rock climbing, so I have an old rock climbing shoebox. I put a Raspberry Pi and sort of made a portable, not a laptop, more of a box top. So I will get it going, but I did buy the entire kit. So Raspberry Pi, very nicely, you know, you can get it packaged. So you know, you can get a case, you can get a mouse, and you can get a keyboard. So I cheated a little bit, sort of, as a maker that way. So I'm gonna just I'll describe what I have here, and then when you come back to me, hopefully it will all be running because it takes a few minutes to boot up. It being a Raspberry Pi, not you know, fast computer. So basically I have two screens. I've got the one behind me, which we'll be able to see a lot better, and I have this one to make it entirely portable. That said, that's what I've got for now, and now I will all I have to do, well, we'll start the process here, is add some power, and I have to add the connection to the other screen as well. So it's just a micro HDMI cable, and believe it or not, it is booting up. We got a little bit of action. So we'll just wait and see what that does in a few minutes, and I'm gonna hand it over to Ian.
Perfect.
Well, guys, my Fiesta Resistance project is 24 years old today. I built my son's cradle, and he is now graduated from university. So yeah, it's been a while, but we've had 9 friends and family babies kind of spend their formative weeks in this little beast. And I designed it right from scratch. And what I did actually was I created a flat pack. So it's just like you'd find at IKEA. Every component that you can see is held together with these wonderful little fasteners that just thread right into the wood. And I will just throw this back in. And that's all there is to it. The whole unit is held together by all these dear little fasteners. And I'm a diehard improviser. So the hardware that I needed to make this, I bought off the rack dowling turnings, and I actually went to McGinnis lighting, and the brass hardware that is the pivot for the swing is actually brass chandelier hardware. So yeah, I would suggest anybody that has the vaguest notion of what they could do with woodworking, you can improvise at so many different levels for doing these things. And you know, a little bit of time on the paper and a lot of time prototyping, and you can end up with something that hopefully will last a few generations.
That's awesome. I love it. Does anybody have any questions for Ian?
How many hours did it take you to make it versus how many hours did your child
Boy,
create it?
I put it together probably over the space of 3 months, and it was kind of evenings kind of project. So I guess one of the better things to say is what I used for tools. The drill press was one of the big ones because I was drilling repetitive holes to repetitive depths, and a good old jigsaw, and my router to round off all the sides. And one of my big things in life is, you know, the time clock never finishes on a project because it's always still a prototype. So after Riley spent his few months in it, I actually added another component in underneath, which is a bit of brass locking hardware to stop it from swinging. Because one of the first things we discovered is babies move
Constantly.
Ian, I have two questions. Have you made anything similar to this since then in the 24 ensuing years?
Well, I've been the fabrication manager for the Canada Games that we recently had here, so we built a ton of stuff there. My other projects around the world include Africa and Papua New Guinea, where I'm a camp manager and build tons of stuff. But in terms of fine woodworking, no, I have never gone this route again. Most of the things I fabricate are function over form. This one was definitely form over function. Although you know, the proof was in the pudding. The function did work out pretty damn fine as well.
Can I ask my second question? Can you turn it around so we can see the end?
Yeah.
Please? That's lovely.
Mm-hmm.
It makes a fabulous shadow on the wall.
Yeah, it works. This is actually Riley's old bedroom. So I've never had to display an item and be on a Zoom call before, hence my pathetic attempt at lighting.
No, it's great.
Oh, and I did win a ribbon at the PGX with it as well.
Beautiful.
So it looks like Belinda's project is back up and running. So I'm going to say thank you, Ian, and I'm going to turn it back over to Belinda so she can talk a bit more about her computer. Oh, you're muted, Belinda.
Here we go. I thought I wouldn't disturb things beforehand, and then it turns out I won't disturb myself either. So as you can see, I've got the two screens. When I'm not mobile, I would want to use the larger screen because the tiny one that fits into a shoebox is really very, very small. It's a 6-inch screen or something. I can't even remember. It might be even be a little smaller than that. Anyway, so for anyone not familiar with a Raspberry Pi, it's like a very versatile board with microprocessor on board, and you can buy one for as cheap as $35. And that's if you have extra equipment around, like if you have an extra keyboard, extra mouse, which at this point many people do from past technology that they had in the last couple decades, then basically you can build a computer for $35, which is what's really cool about this. And you can scavenge screens, all of that. So the thing to know about Raspberry Pi that's, well, I guess that's unique and also cool about it, it basically can do anything that what we'll call a normal computer can do. It has, I mean, you can play games on it, certain games, obviously not the same games. You can, and the same with the software. So all the software that runs on your Raspberry Pi is unique to this type of operating system. So we've got the free version, the open source version of Office on here. So you can have, for instance, a word processing document up. You can surf the web, anything that you would want to do on a normal computer, as long as it's not too intensive. The Raspberry Pi actually will overheat if you're doing anything that requires a lot of processing power. But most people, most of the time, aren't doing that. They're typing a few emails, they are surfing the web, or or whatever. Maybe they're writing a Word document or working in Excel or something like that. All of that is on here. So that's the tour of my little setup. Does anyone have any questions?
Has anyone ever been surprised when you pulled out your little mini Raspberry Pi? And
If by surprised, if I can interpret laughter as surprise, then yes. Yes. I guess it's, I mean, I guess most people wouldn't take it seriously, but I can bring this around and do what I would need to do. And originally I did think I would be moving around a lot more with it and, carting the cardboard box around. The last year, obviously, no one's been moving around at all. So anyways, I haven't had a good opportunity to actually let it stretch its legs and see how far I can go with this. But I also figured it was pretty safe thing to sort of leave around. It's a shoebox. I don't really have any security concerns with it. I would be very sad if something happened to it, but really, if someone saw this sitting in my car, they would probably not be tempted to take it.
Although if you're going through airport security, you might create some questions.
Yeah, I mean, we try not to fly anymore at all for environmental reasons. So the airports are not really a thing, mainly. Maybe every now and then still, but
yeah, like to see somebody at airport security absolutely freaking out about an electronic device in a shoebox that may have timers and
so if they wanted to look at it, they would see stuff like this and they might become a little bit alarmed. Wires and connections and circuit boards and whatever. So yeah, it's a good point. There's a lot of the homemade things, no matter what, if it's homemade electronics, you pretty well can't go near an airport.
Yeah. Cool.
That is really cool.
Can you bring up the Zoom meeting on it?
I don't have, there is a way to install Zoom. I haven't done that yet. So remember I was saying with the software, so you can get an emulator, you can run Zoom on the Pi, but I haven't got it set up yet.
Okay.
I thought about it, not for this. I was just thinking, hey, maybe I can do some of my work on this. But then I got too busy to tinker on the side and get that going at the same time. But yeah, I thought it would be cool if I could be calling into Zoom meetings on a Pi. I would need another camera, actually. That's the only thing I'm missing here.
It really
Still
is
pretty cool.
cool. It really is cool. I remember when I first saw you working on this, I asked you 1,000,001 questions because it just really boggled my mind. So,
Well, and the other, it's actually still a work in progress, as are so many of these things. As you can see, it's not really sitting properly. For a while, I had it nicely wedged in, and then everything started to fatigue, and it's now no longer nicely wedged. What I've been meaning to do is 3D print a holder or a set of holders for all of the components that go in here, because the mouse fits in here, and the mouse and the power supply fit in this blank space up here. And it would be nice if it all sort of clicked in.
It strikes me that it would be a wonderful item to put in front of a classroom of little kids to demystify computers for them.
Yes, it would. It would.
mhm.
It'd also be a neat thing to put in front of a bunch of teenagers, because so much of teenage is that connected your self-worth to the objects that you can afford to have. And this sort of tears down that completely, because this does everything that everybody else's fancy PC does.
Yeah. And it could be made to look a lot more streamlined. I mean, you could 3D print an entire enclosure that would do, that would have all of this, and it would look a lot more slick.
But the shoebox has got that beat.
I think there's some sort of cachet to the shoe. I like the shoebox.
Mhm.
I love
Shoebox is a big screw you to all of the
There's that whole, yes, yeah,
prestige packaging.
exactly.
I definitely find it intriguing. Thank you so much for sharing. I really
You're welcome.
appreciate that. Maureen, do you have something to share with us?
Sure. Can you see this?
You're gonna have to lift it up a little bit.
Right there.
There you go.
Okay, well, I'm the polar opposite of Belinda. She's high tech and I'm low tech. And I like it. And I can travel with this. And I plan to travel as soon as I can. So this is a tiny book, but it has a genesis that came from my studio. So I'm trying to show it to you. And you can see by the size of my hand that it's very small. So a while ago in my studio, I was cleaning and moving things around and came across some beautiful handmade paper. And Brianna is a bookmaker. And so I thought, I need to give this to somebody who's going to do something beautiful with it, because despite that paper being gorgeous, it's not something that, as a visual artist, that works very well for paint. So anyway, I took the paper to her. There were several sheets. And a little while later, she came back and gave me not one, but 2 books. So this one, being the very smallest, had a huge interest to me. So I'm going to open this up, but see this tiny wrapping here, where, how do I show that to you? This way. It's a little band, like the kind of band that I would think would be on a cigar. And heavens knows I don't smoke cigars, but I'm interested in their packaging. So that little paper band is there. And then this beautiful, looks like batik or some kind of a tie-dyed paper, but the book folds open in such an amazing way. But I'm going to just stop there for a second, because I need to show you something else first. So I have a long interest in books, and in particular, books that are bound in Asia. So this is a typically Asian book where all the pages fold open between 2 covers. So this
Cool.
book is what I'm used to. This little book has a twist. So actually, this is around connections. So Brianna, maybe you could take a moment and tell us about the way the paper is connected. Can you do that?
Sure. I brought in some of my other books because of another project I'm working on, so I could actually talk on that with an example. So as Maureen said, like she showed you an accordion book, which is similar to this, which folds out and does that kind of concept. But the book that she's holding, it's called this is called a concertina book. I know it is an accordion, but this is actually called a concertina. This one's actually accordion. So when you fold it out, it looks kind of like it's going to fold out as an accordion, but in reality, what it is it's one sheet of paper that's been cut and folded a certain way to fold up into a book.
And that's what my book is.
And that is what your book is.
Okay. So anyway, I looked at this book, and this year I've been not doing a daily project like I did last year, but every day I do a piece of art. So I started by opening up the little book and drawing a very small tree that could be like a tree of life. But what was interesting, can you hear that noise?
Nope.
Good, because Dave is downstairs using the shop vac, so it's quite loud. So anyway, then every day I would turn the pages over. Oops, there it is. And then I would do another page. But I only saw one page at a time. So that made it quite an interesting thing to fold open, because I would only then look at this small page. And then to make that just a little bit more challenging, this paper was embedded with petals from flowers. And so I tried to incorporate whatever those marks were on the paper into being part of what inspired that image. And then from there, as I finished it, and I'll show you a bit more later, but I wrote small messages to Brianna. And so that then she would be, later when she got the book returned to her, which she of course did not know was coming, that she could then complete the sentence. So that the book and the connection between Brianna and I would go from me to Brianna, Brianna back to me, from me back to Brianna. And now, of course, then she called me up and said, well, how about talking about this? So I guess the ball is now in my court again, thanks to you. So just a quick little flip through. Each one of them was inspired by something different. This one, which has a moon in it, is that really huge wolf moon that we had a little while ago. And it was a marvelously huge moon. And then on a Saturday night, many wine glasses, with the idea that, remember when we could have people over on a Saturday night and drink wine? So that's a little bit of art from memory. And then it bounces around through other things until at the end it's complete and full. I'm not going to go into all the bits of it, but it's a convoluted little thing. And then when I took it back to Brianna, I was really excited to give it to her and say, it's now yours again. And having been mutilated by my pen and paper. So thank you so much for that, Brianna. I love this. And I love it that it's now yours. Thanks.
That's awesome. It's a great connection story, going back and forth, back and forth. Does anybody have any questions for Marie?
I do.
Sure, Belinda.
Did you say, Maureen, how over what period of time you filled the book?
This little book took me about, I'm going to say maybe 15 days, because there's about that many pages in it. However, if I can answer that question in a bigger way, and I'm not going to show you this really. This was my project from last year. So there are 5 books and every page has 2 drawings on it and writing. And that was my 2020 project. So I often do a very large project. In fact, this is my 3rd one piece of artwork per day project that I've done. And the irony is I do want to talk about this for a sec. I mentioned that I was born to travel. I purposely did these in these small books for 2020 because I knew we would be traveling quite extensively. You get the irony in that?
Yep.
It was all canceled. So, I mean, it was such a great project for a year of traveling because in 2016, when I did my last big yearly project, I was toting very large pieces of paper into oversized luggage that had to go into special compartments on the airplane so I could travel the darn thing. So I thought, well, the next time I do it, it's going to be small and portable. What does that say about life?
I don't know, but I will just add that those pictures are beautiful.
Thank you.
Absolutely gorgeous book.
The little book, when I did Brianna's and she didn't know that I was doing it, I actually posted them every day on Instagram. And we might ask Brianna, at what point did she realize that it was her book? Brianna?
I realized immediately that it was the book that I made you, but I didn't realize it was going to be my book again until you showed up that day.
Oh,
gave it to
that's
me.
good.
But I realized, I was like, yay, she's using it. It's making me so happy that she's using the book. So yes, I did notice right away that it was the book that I made.
I was trying not to give away the size. So every day when I would photograph it, I'd have to mask it so that, you know, whatever, however people saw it, they wouldn't know that it was absolutely minuscule.
I like making tiny books. They're fun.
Well, thank you.
Question
Maureen.
for you as well, Maureen.
Oh,
I was
Sandra has a
wondering
question first.
if
Sorry?
at any point during this, did you have, was it hard for you to do a picture a day? Or did you struggle with it, or did you always enjoy it?
It wasn't that hard for me to do that one because I'm just going to go back and tell me if I'm talking too much. But in 2013, in a way that a Luddite like me, who did not embrace technology, I decided I would buy an iPad and I would do a digital piece of artwork per day for an entire year in 2013. And that year also involved a lot of travel as well. So the problem is I needed to, I decided that it had to go into the world digitally or into cyberspace. It wasn't enough that I just made them. So when we were, this will sound like I'm bragging, but we were in Antarctica. And there is no Wi-Fi service. So I then had to wrestle with how to deal with doing art in a digital manner when you're off the grid in terms of electricity. So it's not just like, do I need a Raspberry? I don't have any way of publishing that. So I did force myself through that in 2013. And then in 2016, because it was my goal to do one every 2 years, I would skip 2 years. Then I did the paintings a day. And eventually they were on display, some of them at the art gallery. So some of you may have seen those. But they started off on smallish paper. They were 1 inch square for the month of January. Then they ended up at 12 inches square. But the paper was huge by the time I was done. So that's what prompted me to do this series in smaller books. So by this time, I'm pretty used to committing to a piece of art every day and doing the writing. So I kind of mainline on stuff like that. And I am so committed that I never miss a day. Like I would get up at 3 in the morning if I needed to, because that's just the kind of girl I am. A bit neurotic, maybe. You don't want to travel with me necessarily.
But that, I mean, you just hit the nail on the head, I think, to keep up any kind of creative practice, whether it's writing, art, making, anything, it is necessary to kind of have that component at least every single day. Because I had one writer friend tell me that unless for them, and for them to actually get good at what they do, they needed to set a time every single day where they would write.
Yes.
Yeah.
Nicolay, the great art sort of philosopher, said that we have to make 10,000 mistakes before we get good at something. So I think if you do something every day, that takes care of 365 out of 10,000. So, you know, this art stuff, it's long term.
Yeah.
Maureen, I'm a big fan of crossover technologies or mediums, whatever. And the thing I noticed about that first image you showed us that is in the book is how much it looks like a henna image. Have you ever done henna?
So like you're talking Mendi, that's
Okay.
the Indian art of drawing on our skin with henna. Yes. And that's really great that you said that, Ian. And the reason I'm so excited by that is I have been to India twice. We have very dear friends who are Indo-Canadian. And so that part of the culture is something that doesn't feel that foreign to me. Having said that, though, this particular little tree of life, while it could translate to a henna kind of Mendi pattern or an embroidery, is also because I'm doing the Master Gardener's course right now. And I'm very much thinking about monocots and dicots. So this is kind of based on that as well. Typically, as an artist, all of the things that are interesting you, they thread together and make a kind of weird weaving. But thank you for that compliment. I'll take that as a compliment, that it would be great, Mendi.
Most certainly.
Well, thank you so much, Maureen. I really do appreciate it and explaining all the nuances of how you create.
Thanks.
So now I'd love to turn it over to Ken, and I think he has a really interesting wood piece for us.
Is that?
Oh, I love it.
The connections on this one are more of how ideas evolve. There's a thing with wood turners. If you make a closed form is basically something that's got a smaller opening than a bowl. If you make a closed form and you present it to wood turners, 90% of them will stick their finger in the hole to see if you sanded it or not. So quite a while back, I had, I honestly can't remember where I got the idea of using porcupine quills in things. But I thought, gee, you know, if you stuck some porcupine quills, I'm not sure if the camera pixel is up inside. Inside is sort of like the Chinese finger trap of, yeah, if you stick your finger in there, it's going to stay. So that was sort of the initial thought on this. And then I found this piece of maple burl where only the top was particularly figured. And I wanted to work with that and somehow use that as a top of this piece. And I still had this idea of the porcupine quills. And laying around the shop, there was a few poppy seed heads. And then coronavirus happened, and we were all talking about spikes forever. And the fentanyl crisis. So there's a connection, poppy seeds to fentanyl to opiates. A connection of needles to porcupine quills. And it just sort of, festered on itself until this is what I ended up with. And then one of the other beautiful connections to me was the recent images we've got of the sun. Some of the most close-up images, I think they're taken from 6 or 9 million miles away from the sun, but we've got close-up images of the surface of the sun. So the coloring on the top of it was kind of in a reference to that. And then it was just a matter of figuring out technically how to make it work. So there's a little flashlight inside. There's also a reference to the split we have in wealth and how that's related to drug use and all that. So the interior of it is metal leaf, and I didn't do gold leaf because I can't afford gold, but it's a cheap version of it. So that's that. That was it was a fun project. Any
All
good
I'm gonna
questions?
say is wow.
Yeah, it's not very big, but it's fun. Let your mind wander, and God knows where it will go, and sometimes it doesn't come back.
Oh, Maureen, I think you're asking a question, but you're muted.
Ken, I absolutely love that piece. I love the porcupine quills, and I'm wondering, did you drill those holes and then glue them in?
Yeah,
And if one gets broken off, can you router it out and put a new one in?
on the ones on the outside, yeah, the top is glued in, so I'm not particularly worried about the ones inside. And if somebody sticks their fingers in and gets stuck, well, you know, I mean, there you go. You own a sculpture.
Or it owns
And
you.
you may not own a finger, I'm not sure, you know, but I didn't clip the points. So they are deadly sharp.
That sounds like collecting sculpture the hard way.
Yeah, well, or losing fingers the nasty way.
Where did you get the porcupine quills?
Halford Supply.
Oh,
They're in Edmonton. I think it's Supply. Halford, yeah, HALFORD. They have quite a lot of craft supply kind of stuff, beads, and a lot of trapper type supplies. So leather goods, rawhide, traps, smoking equipment, sausage making stuff, beads that you would expect to show up in First Nations beading kind of projects. That's what I think where the porcupine. These I think are North American porcupines. They also sell African porcupines, which are quite a large.
Ah.
I haven't figured out what I'm going to do with those ones yet.
Do you have some of the African ones, Ken?
Yeah, I got a couple of packages. They're out in the shop.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was going to offer you some more. I brought some back with me on a trip. I just stumbled upon them on
Okay.
the ground and brought them back. So
I may take you up on that because I think I've only got about 20 of them. If I come up with a project that needs, you know, a bunch more.
cool. I'd love to see them go into one of your creative pieces.
Yeah, you know, something like what's behind you at miniature scale, or who knows? I mean, God knows. You never know where these ideas end up.
this is why we meet, so that we can get creative ideas and encourage creativity in each other. Because, as you said, you never know where it's going to come from.
Great.
Honestly, that's an amazing piece. Yeah, that's all I can say is wow.
What's that?
Ken, I have another question. I want to know about the battery and the flashlight inside. And is that black base that you have, is that something that's going to screw off and you can change the battery? I need to know. Oh,
No,
geez.
the flashlight
Right.
switch is in the bottom. The flashlight was the result of staring at the shelves over at Princess Auto until I saw something that I thought would work.
Yeah.
The wood is solid on, but you can take the bottom of the battery off. You know, the flashlight, you just screw the bottom of it off and change the batteries.
Okay.
It's just 3 AAA cells.
Wow. It's beautiful.
Yeah,
Beautiful piece. So thank you so much for sharing. I really appreciate it. Margaret, I know
So I
you
have to follow that by playing with string.
string
Okay.
theory is big.
So my connections this month have all been via Zoom with textile artisans pretty much all over the place because a group of people, some of whom I know, decided to brand this month Fibruary. And so I've taken some textile classes in techniques that I don't usually do. I started with some Tunisian crochet, and I'm working on a stitch sampler in various little stitches. And what I do is I roll a 4-sided die and cast on 5, 10, 15, or 20 stitches and just keep working in random directions until someday I will have a blanket. So that's a stitch sampler of those. Another thing that I've never done before, but we happened to have a speaker for the Fiber Arts Guild, so yet a further connection, come and do a talk on sprung, which is an old technique for, it's not woven, it's an interlinking technique for making fabric that's extremely stretchy and generally can be quite fitted. If it's worked more closely, it becomes a little more solid, but you may be able to see light through this from my kitchen. Not much though, but it's got a certain amount of openness to it. You can see my finger moving in behind it now.
Mhm.
And so
How is
this
it
will be a
different from,
pouch. Sorry?
how is it different from knitted or crocheted?
Well, one, it's done on a loom or a frame, but you don't have a weft. It's just the way that the fabric interlaces. So it's more like a really complicated braid or like chain link fence.
Oh.
Okay.
So
Star.
it's its own technique. And so this, you can definitely see a little bit better as I spread it out, is a different style. This is the interlaced with a little bit of interlinking here where I messed up on the pattern because I'm just learning this. But we had an internationally renowned sprang artist come on to the Fiber Arts Guild seminar series. And that same weekend, I had an opportunity to take an online 1-hour Zoom class in the technique. And that's what I made the pouch from. And then the follow-up to that class was for the interlaced, which I'm still working on. There's going to be another class for that. And then I did some other stuff. There was a historic posements class. So I started learning how to do some of the knotted stuff that would normally be done in wire. Only what I had handy was bits of string that I had made. So this would normally be done in tin wire or silver wire wrapped around a silk core to give you a fancy knotted piece of trim to be sewn down to fabric. And I just got a little bit of stitch samplers in various bits of cord. So there's the square stitch sampler there. And another set of stitches here. These ones make a little sawtooth edge that you could sew around a curved piece rather than just straight. So they're all just little sample technique pieces for something that I could do in metal work or could do in silk cord down the road for embellishing clothing with. And there's a tablet weaving class coming up for a technique for tablet weaving that I have not done. And then the other tie-in is I'm also working on a make-along. And this is from yarn that I spun in the month of January as part of the Spin Together group. And so this is going to be a shawl shaped like a maple leaf. There's not a lot to it though, so it's really hard to get it to open out to show people.
Cool.
And this is yarn that is 4 strands thick. And
Wow.
lace weight. So that took me the month of January to.
Margaret, that kind of trim that you're making, is that the sort of braid that military people would have on their shoulders? And
They actually still do use it as military braid in places like Sweden and Norway.
okay. Very cool.
But it's been around since the Iron Age, give or take.
And what's that maple leaf going to be? A shawl or?
It's a shawl.
Some beautiful pieces.
Mhm.
I know that you're always taking up new ways to do what you love to do with thread and string and all those kinds of things. Now I know we talked a bit about the shawl before, and so like that shawl, you spun all of those threads and
Mhm.
wove them together.
I'm knitting them, yes.
Yeah. So everything
But
that you're using there are
yarn is
actual
hand spun.
yarn that you have spun.
Yeah. So this
Pretty
is what's
amazing.
left as I come in on the end of it. I will have some leftovers that I'll be able to do either some weaving or something else with.
Is that spun on a wheel or
Yeah.
hand spun?
Well, it is hand spun, but I still have to use my hands to run the wheel.
Yeah. But not drop spindle.
No, that one's not spindle.
Yeah.
That's one 950-yard contiguous length. So it had to come off of one bobbin.
Wow.
I wanted the color order to be exactly as it was without any breaks.
Can you show us what a drop spindle is? Because for some people who might be watching us, they may not know what we mean by that.
I've got a couple of them, of course, right here because all of my projects are within arm's reach. So here's one. This is a style that comes from Peru that was given to me by our keynote speaker at the 2019 Fiber Arts Conference we hosted in town. I finished putting some alpaca I was spinning onto this. Technically, by Andean standards, this is not yet full, but it's all I had of this yarn to finish with. They would actually get quite a bit more onto there. Now, what I've got here is a cross arm spindle. And again, I'm plying. So what I'm doing is just running my 2 yarns together to make the yarn the thickness that I want and letting it twirl until there's enough twist in it. And as it gets heavier, it gets slower. So this one's about half full now, and it's starting to bog down a little bit. The physics change as you get more yarn onto a spindle. And so sometimes it's not as efficient to have something that's super full. Because as this ball gets bigger and this slows down, you're having to hold it out for longer and longer and longer while you wait for the twist to catch up to where you want it. And that can lead to interesting overuse injuries from, you know, holding your arm out for 3 hours in a day or 6 or 8 hours if you're doing a whole bunch of it. Because you don't think that the couple ounces that's on this spindle is all that much weight until you've held it up for an 8-hour day.
Margaret, I want to tell you something. So do you remember when we had the big Fiber Arts conference?
Yes.
And you made these lovely little, I don't know if you can see that or how to see it. Those little, there were little woven pieces that hung on something.
Yeah, I still have a few.
Well, anyway, we now have a very tiny dog. And she's so small that I couldn't buy a commercially made collar. So I took this beautiful little piece of weaving and I attached little plastic ends that were from a commercially made collar. So Lily has this fabulous little hand woven collar, thanks to you.
That's phenomenal. I'm glad you found a great use for it.
Well, it's beautiful on her, and it's made out of what, cotton, I think?
Yes, that's cotton.
Yes, it's a beautiful use. There's, pardon me?
She was in the frame, so it didn't show up if you were
Yes.
trying to show it off.
Oh, I don't know how to do that.
You'd have to raise her up into frame because right now you can only see the top of her head.
Oh, well,
And then
that's
expose
Lily,
her.
but I'm trying to show you the
Oh,
little
She's
collar.
got the collar. You just have to
Yeah.
move that to about where you had her and it should show up.
How about,
Over a little more. And up. Okay, we see your fingers. Down a bit. Oh, there.
right
There
there.
we are.
Go back.
Okay. Let's back
There
it
you
up.
go. There you go.
There we
There
go.
it is.
Yeah, sometimes it's hard to figure out where things are in frame.
Yes.
Depending on.
So then when I stitched it, I just put the little clip on that came from
Mhm.
the real collar. But you know what? This is a way people would buy these, especially people with small dogs. Handmade collars. It's gorgeous.
Mhm. What would you have to sell them for in order to recoup
Oh.
a reasonable hourly rate for making them?
Well, the lanyards I was selling for a somewhat unreasonable, but I was willing to take it, $15 each
Oof.
when I
Yes.
sold the remaining lanyards at the end of the conference.
Okay.
And the
and then-
Fast-X, sorry, the Fast-X buckle that you put on that you scavenged from the other one, you can
Yes.
buy those at Surplus Herbies or any number of different places, and they're quite inexpensive, especially when you get down to that small.
Yeah.
Yeah, the trick
Yeah.
is the smaller they are, you have to make sure you get the ones with the springier plastic, because the ones I bought bulk that I got a 50 pack of are in fact quick release if there's a little too much weight put on them.
Mhm.
Which is good for a collar.
Yes and no. If the dog pulls hard enough that it quick releases its collar and takes off into the road, it's not so good.
Yeah, I'm thinking of cats where they pull continuously and
Well, no, I
they'll
actually
strangle
did
themselves.
about a half-inch one on a bracelet at one point for a loop on a purse. And all I had to do was drop my arm 4 inches and stop it rapidly. And the weight of the wallet would break it open.
Oh, well, that
Wow.
wouldn't work for a dog because when
No,
they
it
go
wouldn't.
run, they go running.
They go running.
But,
You have a nice little side
You
business
just have
there.
to watch that they're actually firm.
You'll
There's
have a
a
nice
lot
little
to
side business there because people will spend whatever they can on their dogs. I used to work at a Yale puppy store when I was younger, and people would come in buying diamond encrusted collars for their dogs. So
It would not be an unreasonable amount to ask for $30 at least for a little dog collar, like something that would go around Lily. The bigger would be more expensive. And I would pay $30. And I have another thing that I need to tell you, Margaret. Do you remember when you stitched those tiny, I call them face cloths?
Yeah, I actually have
You
a stack of them now.
Yes, you made those for people to remove makeup. It's Lily's face cloth. And I mean, she loves it and she loves to lick it as well. So that's another thing for your dog selling business. Exactly like that. Dogs love that. And when you clean around their eyes, they're perfect.
Yeah, I'm still making them periodically.
They love to lick them as well because they're rough. Well done, Margaret.
you can open up a dog boutique now, Margaret.
In my infinite
Lily
free
can be
time.
your model.
Thank you so much for sharing all your amazing pieces that you created over this last few months. We really appreciate it. Cassandra, your turn.
Okay. So I've actually been really inspired by Margaret, and I decided to do a red basket weave.
Oh, bloody awesome.
Wow.
So this is my first time actually doing it. And I kind of was inspired by like a picnic basket as well, because the weather has been not really figuring out what it wants to do. And I kind of want it to be spring now. And, you know, you kind of miss having picnics and just being able to connect with everyone. So that was my idea behind it. Yeah.
Cool.
So it was a lot of fun and I hope it tastes delicious.
And you're going to break it?
Yes.
How long did it take you?
It didn't actually take me too long. I think once it actually rose, that took about 2 hours, but altogether probably 4 hours. Bake time included.
Wow.
That would be so beautiful for Easter, filled with edible Easter eggs.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Oh my gosh.
Is there not an art form where people actually lacquer those things for
Yeah.
permanent, for keeps kind of shelf space?
There
Mm.
is. But I think, I mean, you spend all that time making something that you know is edible. I mean, you kind of want to eat it.
That's true. I'm the type of person who likes to snack on things as they make it too. So.
You have to eat it soon.
Yeah.
No, stale bread is just stale bread.
Mhm. What a great idea.
What brought up the idea for, well, obviously inspired by Margaret, but what encouraged you to go in that direction with bread instead of yarn?
So I am moving and all of my arts and crafty things are packed away. So I was looking around my house, seeing what is actually still unpacked. And most of my baking stuff is still unpacked.
It's actually a good challenge is to not like when you don't have anything to make with, what can you actually use? I do that a lot for dinner because I don't have any food in the house. So what do you make?
Sometimes it turns out great, and other times it's just not what you're looking for ever.
At one of the monthly make drop-ins, we were actually discussing the logistics behind making it. I'm glad it turned out that well. It looks fantastic.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Really good.
Beautiful.
Does anybody have any questions for Cassandra?
When you were baking it or forming it and it's rising, is it over top of a bowl or something to keep the form?
Yeah, so I actually got one of the Corningware dishes. And I covered it in tin foil just so that it'd be easier to slip out. And I found that worked. It was kind of sketchy at first, but once I got the momentum of turning it, it came out good.
Yeah.
Can you show us again and show us the inside?
Oh, sure.
We need to see it a little more closely. Please.
So you do outside,
Oh,
and then- So I made it in 3 parts and then just kind of stuck it together with toothpicks for easy removal.
Okay.
Oh, it's beautiful. It looks delicious.
Smells quite good too.
Oh, Ollie.
If only we could reach through the screen, right?
Right?
Mm.
I'll start ripping pieces off for you guys to share.
See, now that's connection,
Very much so.
connecting across bread.
Gives us a whole new
That I
definition
missed.
of breaking bread.
Yeah, the connection of sharing food with my friends is one that I think one of the ones I miss the most.
Mhm,
Mm.
absolutely. Well, thank
So
you for
was the
sharing.
dough just a very straight dough, or is it?
Yeah, just a basic dough.
Are you thinking about your bread oven, Ken?
Well, just thinking about how dough behaves,
Mm,
because my experience is you have elasticity and extensibility, so they don't work together very well. At least in my experience, if you work the bread very much or the dough very much, it wants to pull back on itself. So working it so that it extends enough that you've got a long piece that you can do the weaving with without having it scrunch back and refuse to stretch. I continue to struggle making a pizza crust that I can get to stretch out without springing back. And it's
Well, the springing back means you've got enough gluten in the crust.
yeah, so controlling the gluten. I mean, if you leave it sit for 10 minutes, it goes back to more relaxed. But working with flour or working with dough it's not straightforward. There's this massive amount of learning and nuance to it that's
Definitely trial and error.
you
Yeah.
cannot beat it into shape.
well, thank you very much. I think it's a beautiful piece, and I know there's probably like a full hour we can talk about bread because there are a lot of nuances
Not
when
this
it
close
comes
to
to
supper.
bread. But thank you very much for sharing. I'm glad you undertook something new and then you were inspired by somebody.
Me too. It was quite fun.
So I guess that leaves me to share what I've made. So this piece, I actually started it back in like December. So I did an amazing workshop by Anna Maria Lowry on Stitch Your Story. If honestly, it was a really lovely workshop. And what we did is we looked at creating postcards out of textiles. And so my piece, you guys can see it, is a postcard made completely out of textiles and embroidery.
Hmm.
So in this piece, so it's more than just a postcard because postcard itself has that element of connection. So I've actually written a message on the back here for my aunt, and I will be sending it to her. So cross fingers that it works by going into the mail. But the image that's on the front is about connection as well. So this is a memory that I had of my mom's coat. When I was about 3 years old, we moved up to the Northwest Territories. We lived in Yellowknife for quite some time. And while we were there, my mom was fascinated with the coats and actually took courses on how to make them by traditional makers. And so she made a coat for myself, which is represented as the red one there with fur, and one for herself, which is represented with the white. And on the white coat, it was all this beautiful boiled wool with satin applique of a northern scene. And I remember I used to spend hours and hours and hours just staring at this coat and touching it and wanting to hold it. Like throughout my whole entire childhood, it wasn't just at that age. I loved this coat. I thought it was stunning. The coat that she made for me obviously was when I was like 3 years old, so it didn't last until adulthood. But she never wore this coat. She really wanted to keep it special, and so she would always have it kind of zipped up. I think she wore it once or twice. So this is the memory of me being fascinated by my mom and by the coat. So I'm holding on to the end of my mom's coat in this memory.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And then, as I said, on the back, I'll send it to my aunt. Yeah. So that's my
Oh.
piece.
Brianna, are
Yeah.
you planning to put it in the mail like that with a stamp on it?
What I'm thinking of doing is putting a stamp on it, but then putting a plastic bag around it to just ensure nothing bad happens. But apparently, because this is postcard size, you can post this as a postcard.
I have some experience with putting art in the mail.
Okay.
I hate to say this, but it very often doesn't get to the recipient.
Mm,
They're very tempting. And I've been told that it's not just the machines that might snag it. So that's just something that I've experienced a lot with. So what I do now when I do put something in the mail, if I really want it to arrive, I actually, and I hate to say this, I put it in an envelope and for sure it gets there. When I have put something like that in the mail, not stitched, but other pieces of art that I've done, I take a photograph of it and I make sure I document when it's left. And so the recipient knows that it should arrive in a certain number of days. But it's amazing how art disappears. So I wouldn't want to see that disappear.
Yeah.
But it does take some of the fun out of it going through the mail system.
It does, because I think the whole point of it is to just, you make a postcard, right? To send it.
So
Yeah.
as long as you're prepared for it to be lost. So make sure that your aunt sees it before it goes, or keep the backup as well as when you write on it, and even maybe document when you take it to the post office and have it canceled.
Mm.
But Anyway,
Yeah.
just experience there.
I've worked in the post office a few times, and if it's hand canceled, it's the kind of thing that somebody dumps it into a machine and the machine's just going to destroy it.
Mhm.
They're just not set up for that.
Yeah.
But putting it in an envelope, even a plastic bag, it might work. You
You
sealed
know,
it up.
Yeah. Anyways, that's my piece. Does anybody have any questions on it, or?
How long did it take you to make it?
Ooh, I would say about 24 hours. Because it's a lot of hand embroidered stitchery, so there's like a lot of like hand applique there, and then the fur is all right over here. Where's the fur? Where is my finger? Nope, there. So the fur is all French knots, and if you know embroidery French knotting, it takes
Mhm.
forever.
Was that to reduce like the fraying when you cut the fur out, or?
Sorry.
I said, why did you use French knots? Was that to keep it in more firmly or to reduce fraying?
Nope, actually, I used French knots because it created a texture of fur.
Oh,
So the French knots are that kind of, it's not real fur, it just gives that illusion of fur.
oh,
And then I tried to like everything else. I mean, I could tell you what all the stitches are, but it gets boring. But
Yeah,
everything else
French
is
knots
just,
do a really good approximation of a lamb's wool because
yeah,
the
it really
French
is.
knots emulate the
Hmm.
curl pretty well.
Yeah, but it does give a really nice illusion of the fact that it looks like fur. And then this kind of on the white, oh, right over. I'm doing it backwards. It's kind of hard to see to do it backwards. Right there. So the white, this stitch here kind of gives an illusion of satin.
hmm.
Beautiful.
Mm.
Mm.
There we go.
I think you challenge all of us to doing something like a bit applique, wool, margary. Maybe throw that out. Can we do something like that sometime?
Absolutely. You can
Yeah,
do.
like around the material, the actual
Mhm.
fiber of that, and whether it can put stitchery into the wood, but somehow that we include the fiber with whatever else it is we're making.
Hmm.
I could go for
Absolutely.
that.
Well, next month's prompt is story. So maybe you make a story out of how you learned how to stitch or something like that in the wood,
Mhm.
or but that is next
Yeah.
month's prompt. We will have that posted on our social medias pretty soon. And I will say that Anna Maria was watching and she actually sent forward some Wikipedia pages on the notion of spraying that you were talking about, Margaret.
Mhm.
So I can always share that with everyone here. And I really appreciate you all staying and talking with me and sharing all your pieces. Is there any more last words of wisdom before we say goodnight?
Just an odd connection that floated through my head, and I'll throw this one to Ian because you have an obscure mind like mine. The computer on the lunar lander, I think it was on the lunar lander, was literally hardwired memory. They brought in a bunch of women who were, I think, knitters to knit the memory, the wiring of this computer, which kind of spins, from the Raspberry Pi through Margaret's weavings. Do you remember this, Ian?
They just reran it as part of a documentary within the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
I've seen it before, but I was reminded of it just very recently, and it's mind-boggling as they zoom in closer and closer and closer into the circuitry, and you see the detail in it. It's absolutely mind-boggling.
Yeah, it's something that Margaret could pull off.
Oh,
Mhm.
absolutely.
And maybe she could make a new memory unit for the Raspberry
Oh
Pi.
my God, a knitted computer.
Yes, well, that's what it was.
Well, the first
Yeah.
computer zoomed, so why not?
Well, it was more of a loom though, because it was a hard structure. I wonder if it's doable on a more of a free form structure.
Oh, the juices are
There's your
flowing.
challenge. I don't know what diameter of wire they used.
Well, Margaret's got the background in both of those fields, so
The juices turn.
Yeah.
I'll stick with turning. It's okay.
I
Just
think
make
that's a good
shavings
note
and
to
dust.
end on. So again, I really want to say a huge thank you to Maureen, Margaret, Cass, Ken, Ian, Belinda, who unfortunately had to leave us a little bit earlier, and for sharing all your amazing creativity with us and spending this last hour with us. And yeah, so thank you guys so much. And anybody
welcome.
else out here who's watching, please join us for next month's MakerLab Monthly Makes. As I said, the prompt is story, and you could really make whatever you want on any medium that you choose as long as it fits into the prompt. So thank you guys very much again.
Brianna, do you have the date for that?
The date
Yes.
for
For
this
the
show and tell.
one? Yes, for March.
So it's for the whole month of March, but the show and tell will be the last Thursday of the month, which
Okay,
is
It's the 25th.
the 25th.
okay. Thank you.
Not a problem.
This is really fun. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Love it. Love it.
All right, we're gonna
Okay.
end the live.